All right, our big guest of the week knows the SEC so well. Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South joins us every time we need to talk some real SEC football, and he's going to join us now. What's going on, man?
You said big guest of the week. I'm 5'8". So look, I B1G guest, I would get that because I'm a Big Ten graduate technically. But big guest, I don't know if I'm clocking in worthy of that kind of title.
Your name has got cachet, my friend. That's why we say the big guest. So, hey, a name that's got a lot of cachet is Georgia. I have to be honest, man. I knew they'd be really good. I felt that they'd be Alabama good, and what I mean by that is they'd be good. They'd have some struggles. They've had zero struggles, and Stetson Bennett looks phenomenal. Your thoughts on what you've seen from Georgia?
Yeah, I was blown away. I was blown away when I saw him week one. Being there in Atlanta, and the thing that I keep bringing up is you see the spacing that the offense has and how different this team is compared to 2019. And you see the way that they get those playmakers involved. Everybody knows about the tight ends they have, and that's all well and good. But it's Monken's system. It's being able to disguise so many different looks. It's the fact that they have these tight ends who are just not human beings, as far as I'm concerned. Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, not human beings. And it is almost an afterthought that the ground game is so second fiddle to the passing game. And oh, by the way, they have gotten really nothing out of Eric Gilbert. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They lost George Pickens, their best receiver, to the NFL draft. They had Jermaine Burton transfer to Alabama. And there's like, oh, yeah, we're just going to figure things out with Lad McConkey and A.D. Mitchell and these guys who just like were not household names at all last year. And that's how quickly this has changed. And that's why scheme matters. Georgia is doing some things that are just absolutely remarkable. 8 new starters on the defense. You got Malachi Starks playing at a Derek Stingley type level as a true freshman at that number 2 corner spot. Georgia is the number 1 team in college football right now. And I was reluctant to say it, but they absolutely have earned that so far.
All right, how about that big victory for Brian Kelly there for LSU, going over and taking down Mississippi State, a team that I think is really, really good. And Brian Kelly, especially after that first game against Florida State, there were a lot of questions, but he answered some of those.
It's an unpopular thing to say, but Brian Kelly has himself a gritty football team. And that's not something we've talked about with LSU in the last 2 years. They have not been gritty whatsoever. When things have not gone their way, it has seemingly gotten worse. And yeah, I understand you have the really embarrassing ending against Florida State. That team had nothing going for it for the first 50, 55 minutes of that football game, and then they almost had a chance to win. That's the sign of a team, and specifically a quarterback with Jaden Daniels, that does not care what has happened and is able to block out that sort of noise. When things aren't going right, can you find that trigger to say, hey, I'm still in this. I still got a chance. And when Austin Williams muffed that punt from Mississippi State, and Mississippi State's about to take over up 16-10 in that game, and he muffs that punt, LSU was like, boom, door swung wide open. We're going to figure things out on third down. Even though we started off 0 for 8, we're going to be able to rush off the edge with BJ Ojolari, and we're going to kick their absolute butt at the line of scrimmage with those new tackles that they have in Mississippi State. And they figured things out. And if you're a year 1 coach, that's kind of all you can ask for. They're going to lose some football games this year. They're going to be a tough team to put away for 60 minutes. And that's what this start so far with Brian Kelly, a very imperfect start with a lot of sloppy things that need to be corrected. But that's what this start has told us about this football team.
All right, tell me how A&M is favored in a game against a top 10 team when A&M's number 23. What A&M struggles with is stopping the run. That's what Arkansas does so well. What A&M struggles with offensively, Arkansas has a hard time stopping, but it doesn't matter if A&M's not throwing the ball down the field. We're talking about the Arkansas secondary. How are they favored in this one?
It's a great question because I had that initial reaction when I saw that line. It was 2.5. And I've said Arkansas, in my opinion, was the better football team coming into the season. They're a better football team right now. But can you expose that one serious weakness? Can you, if you're A&M with your veteran quarterback now and Max Johnson, expose Arkansas on the back end? Because when that defense does not get home with Drew Sanders and company, they can be had. And they have allowed nothing but 300-yard passers so far. They just did it to Missouri State with Bobby Petrino. And if you watch the way that secondary looked on the back end now without Jalen Catalon, who's out for the year, they're hoping to get Miles Slusher back. But it has been bad. It has been really bad. So if you're the Aggies, if you can't get it going now, I don't know when you can. because this is set up so well. Arkansas is dead last in the country in pass defense, dead last. And that's despite the fact that I think defensively, they've actually done some really good things. And Drew Sanders has been a revelation for them, the former 5-star, the transfer from Alabama. But if they don't get home, they just leave that door wide open. So what does it look like if Arkansas is trailing late in that game? And, the passing game has been good, but it has not been great. And can they rely on that ground game? Because the ground game also very, very good, but you kind of wonder, what does it look like? They've had 3 kind of tough games in a row where KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders have really had to carry the workload. And so can they do that 4 consecutive weeks? I think that's why A&M is favored in this one, although I do think Arkansas is going to win the football game.
Florida and Tennessee, a couple weeks back, Anthony Richardson was all the hype about, hey, maybe he'll get into the Heisman Trophy conversation. Still hasn't thrown a touchdown pass. Got, I think, 4 interceptions. Hendon Hooker has been phenomenal since last year when they inserted him into the lineup. It's about quarterback play, I think, in this one, and Hendon Hooker's trending in the right direction.
He really is. I love me some Hendon Hooker. I've had him locked in at that number 2 spot in my SEC quarterback rankings basically since the end of last season. And I haven't seen anything this year that suggests he shouldn't be on that level. Now, we'll wait and see if Stetson Bennett continues to progress, if he's going to be able to overtake him. But Hendon Hooker's a fun watch. And kind of the crazy thing about him is, for as good as he has been, he can actually still improve. He still takes too many sacks. He can still get better on those downfield chances, and he can actually become a more precise quarterback. But the thing that makes Tennessee so dangerous is that they can adjust really well. And this is maybe the difference between this year's team and last year's team. If you take away one element of their game, they can now pivot to so many different guys. They have 3 guys who are legit stud wide receiver ones who, in my opinion, if they went to A&M, they would be the go-to receiver. And I don't mean that as a shot at A&M, but I think if any one of those guys, Brew McCoy, Jalen Hyatt, and then Cedric Tillman, if any one of those guys went to A&M, they would instantly become the number 1 receiver. They have been that good so far to start off the year, and Cedric Tillman trusts them, and that ground game is really good. They had 4 starters returning on the offensive line, and it shows. So I look at Tennessee and I say, all right, I know their offense could be really good. I said coming into the season, the offense could be number 1 in all of college football, in part because their defense might not get a ton of stops. They're going to have to score some points. If that defense shows up against Florida and they impose their will against Anthony Richardson, this one can get ugly. I mean, real ugly. And that's not something we talk about with Tennessee and the fact that they have 1 victory against Florida in the 21st century. But this one can get out of hand, and that's why that spread is sitting there at 10 points right now.
So break down the SEC East for me. You got Georgia, obviously. And then is it Tennessee? Is it Kentucky? How do you see that breaking down?
Yeah, I see Tennessee in that number 2 spot. That's what I've been saying throughout the offseason. I think going on the road against Pitt and being able to win the way that they did, score the fewest amount of points that they've had in a win in the Josh Heupel era, and that even came, as a result of overtime as well. And then I would put Kentucky at a very close number 3. And the only hesitancy I have with Kentucky is that the ball security is still kind of an issue with them. They still turn the football over a little bit too much for my liking. Their special teams are also a liability right now. If you remember the Florida game, they gave away 6 points. If they were going to lose that game, it was going to be because of the special teams issues that they had with being able to snap the football, being able to kick, do those little things. But we're splitting hairs here. The East is good. The East is good. They have 3 legitimate chances to go to a New Year's Six Bowl this year, which I don't normally say that about the East at all. I think it's a little bit overblown. I think a lot of them benefit because of the schedule. East is just good. And I think those teams at the top are going to have a really difficult time playing against each other. I said in the offseason that Tennessee was going to beat Georgia. I'm holding on to that, even though Georgia has looked the part, obviously, so far. But yeah, Tennessee and Kentucky, they are 2 and 3 and not necessarily on the level that Georgia is, but definitely worthy of being top 10, top 15 teams.
Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. Thanks, my man. Appreciate you as always.
Anytime. Appreciate it, man.